Hi, I'm Kath from caffeinerob.com and welcome to another episode of my podcast slash YouTube video slash blog. I really enjoyed the research I did for you a little while ago on the importance of nutrition in mood disorders and mental health, and I wanted to do another nerd out episode today. So this time I'm doing a deep dive into sleep and how to lay good sleep foundations. So I'm calling it How to Get a Good Night's Sleep. So this article isn't specifically about addressing specific insomnia issues, but to address any insomnia issues, we need good foundations, removing the obstacles to good night's sleep. So let's dive in. So when I was getting the best sleep of my life, it was actually a time about a decade or two ago where apps were new, and I had this app on tracking your sleep. And a friend of mine used to compare our app reports on how we were sleeping. And it was just amazing because I would literally lie down, my head would hit the pillow, and I would basically flatline immediately. And then I'd have this beautiful sleep cycle going through all the stages of sleep and wake up feeling fresh. And I wasn't on any sleep medications. And the reason is because sleep like that does not come from a medication. Medications can knock us out, but they don't always or very rarely address underlying quality of our sleep and have us feeling really refreshed. And they can create dependency. So ideally, sleep is based on having good sleep habits, the habits that support sleep. And we can best understand how that works by realizing that sleep is actually the result of specific hormones. So it's a balance of cortisol and melatonin. Cortisol rises in the morning to give us energy for the day and then drops down at night, ideally. And melatonin acts the opposite. Melatonin, which is known as our sleep hormone, but is also an antioxidant and has a lot of healing properties, which is why sleep's so important, is low in the morning, so we wake up fresh, ideally, and then it rises up and peaks at bedtime. So we want to get this really beautiful inverse relationship between cortisol and melatonin happening, and that isn't easily created by a tablet. Some people get some support from being on melatonin, but the best way to do it in the long term is to support the habits that support these hormones. Sleep is also impacted by certain neurotransmitters, and there's all our other hormones can impact our sleep hormones, and our gut microbiome and our nervous systems impact all of that as well. So this is why taking sleeping tablets is really a poor substitute for living in the way that supports all of these systems and functions. There's no sleeping tablet around that improves our neurotransmitters, balances our hormones, supports our gut microbiome, soothes our nervous system. They don't really work that way. So to get the foundations in place, we need to take it one step at a time and correct our lifestyle habits to support all of these functions. So this is a big article coming up. So rather than being overwhelmed, I want you to read through so you've got all the background information of what can help our sleep. And then just by the end of it, choose 3 actions, and I'm going to tell you how to go about doing that at the end, which you can take to help improve your sleep foundations. So let's talk about your morning rituals. So I will confess I'm a little bit woo, and I love a morning ritual. I love all those articles and books about morning rituals, whether they talk about writing your morning pages or saying affirmations or doing meditation. I'm on board with all of it. I love it. But when it comes to improving sleep, there are 3 very specific aspects to a morning ritual that count the most. So whatever else your morning ritual includes, let it be some of these. So the first one is don't sleep in. You don't have to be part of the 4 a.m. club. I'm not, and I really suggest you don't. I work between 7 and 8 a.m. and this is just fine. But don't get into the habit of sleeping until midday on the days that you have off and being in this all over waking schedule. Rather, get up at a consistent time to help establish this beautiful cycle of cortisol and melatonin, which act in opposition to each other and need to be balanced. And that will help you come off that cycle with a perfect balance for sleeping at the other end of the day. Now, in the morning, if you can get some natural outdoor light early on, this is the perfect way to set your circadian rhythm. Once you're awake, get some natural light as soon as you can, ideally between 6 and 8:30, but just as soon as you're able to. It's super important because the light receptors in our eyes actually send a signal to our pineal gland, and this stops the melatonin production. So that helps that balance of the hormones and resets our circadian clock. Now, outside light is infinitely better for this purpose than indoor and artificial light. Even on dull days, it's been recorded to be much more stimulating to the pineal gland. Now, if you can get outside for 30 minutes in the morning, that is ideal. But for a lot of us, that's not realistic. So just even a few minutes in the morning before you go to work or before you start your day is wonderful. And then if you have a lunch break or coffee break and you can get outside for a few minutes without your sunglasses, because we want to get those light receptors stimulated. And do whatever's possible in your situation. Exercise, we all know, I'm guilty of avoiding it, but we all know it's great for overall health at any time of day. But when it comes to optimizing your sleep and your hormonal response and circadian clock, morning exercise is the best. So exercise increases our stress hormones, including cortisol, and we want that early in the day unless we have dysregulated stress hormones or in adrenal burnout. It's another topic. But for the most part, we want that jump in our cortisol at the start of the day because that sets that nice rhythm and suppresses the melatonin so that we're not feeling groggy. Now, there's morning exercise makes the most of that rise of cortisol to regulate our circadian rhythm, and later afternoon exercise can increase our core body temperature. And then after the exercise, we're likely to suppress our core body temperature just naturally, and that drop in temperature helps us to fall asleep as well. So for afternoon exercise to make the most of the temperature change, that will be about 4:30, so that a few hours later we get a drop in temperature and we can go to sleep. Exercising really late at night just before bed stimulates cortisol and can keep us awake. And exercising in the middle of the day doesn't really have an impact on our sleep one way or the other because it doesn't make the most of the cortisol rhythm and it also doesn't make the most of the rise and fall in body temperature. Still good for your health though. Now, the best kind of exercise for many things, including sleep, is resistance or weight training because this improves our muscle quality by increasing the mitochondria, which are the energy creating factories in our muscles. And that helps to release optimum hormones for sleep regulation and to give us the energy we need to get through our day and help balance our glucose metabolism and insulin, which then impacts other hormones. So resistance training is a fantastic thing to do early in the morning. Now, we are what we eat, so eat to sleep. I used to think we are what you eat was a fairly metaphorical thing, a bit of old wives' wisdom, but the further I got into my naturopathy studies, I realised that that truism is quite literal. Our body is literally constructed and run by the products that we absorb from the food that we eat. And this goes for sleep too, because how you eat will either help or harm your efforts for good night's sleep. It impacts your microbiome, it impacts your hormones, it impacts your neurotransmitters, all those aspects that we talked about, and your nervous system impacting on your sleep. So firstly, the timing of food has a really big impact on our health. I'm so happy that time-restricted eating, or intermittent fasting as it's also known, has made a comeback, as it helps with so many metabolic and hormonal issues. A really good place to start with timing your eating when your first goal is to improve the quality of your sleep is to have your last meal of the day or your last snack of the day quite early and not taking any further food or calories after that for at least 2 hours before bed, even more if you can. So, for example, if you get to bed by 10 p.m., which is ideal, then have your dinner and your snacking done for the day by 8 p.m. and only have water or unsweetened herbal tea after that. So even hot milks and coffees and things with milk in, and alcohol. All those things are also increase our blood sugar and increase our calories and require digestion. So just water and herbal tea after 8 p.m. to go to bed by 10. And this also prevents reflux when you lie down, which is a common disruptor of sleep. And it means that that distracting sense of fullness and the hard work it requires our body to digest will have passed, and our bodies can relax and just allow sleep easier. Now, on that as well, we want to drink enough water and herbal teas through the day so that we're well hydrated, because dehydration is actually one of the common reasons for poor sleep quality. Now, if you think about it, the body uses a lot of water during sleep. Our lymphatic system, which removes bacteria and viruses and other toxins, I guess, of the immune system, is activated when we're asleep. And so is our lymphatic system, which is a watery fluid that washes out our brain of plaques and any damage caused throughout the day, and that gets refreshed during sleep as well, which is why there are some links between poor sleep over many years and the development of cognitive decline. So it's really important to be well hydrated to allow for good sleep. Another thing we want to do with our diet is support our microbiome. So our gut microbiome is really key for many, many functions that originate in the gut, including serotonin production. Although serotonin is known as a neurotransmitter, most of it's actually produced in the gut. Now, we know it as a mood neurotransmitter, but what a lot of people don't know is that it's actually a precursor to the hormone melatonin. So to have a good supply of melatonin, you need a good supply of serotonin, which is why sometimes when people are depressed, their sleep quality is disrupted as well. So to support your gut microbiome, you need a really wide variety of vegetables. The bigger variety of plant food in your diet, the better your gut microbiome. So different vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, and your ancient grains will really support all the different healthy bacteria to stay in balance. We also want to have fermented foods in our diet, such as sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, tempeh, miso, all those things, to actually introduce more good bacteria into the gut. Now, one other thing to introduce more of in your diet is magnesium. Magnesium is an amazing key nutrient that is required for like 300 processes in the body, including balancing our stress response and supporting the mental and physical relaxation, which we require to relax enough to have a good night's sleep. During times of stress, our need for magnesium increases. So in this day and age where a lot of us are stressed a lot of the time, many of us have an insufficient intake. So you really want to concentrate on magnesium-rich foods in your diet, such as leafy green vegetables, the ancient grains again, legumes, nuts, and seeds. It can also be absorbed topically by either having a bath in magnesium flakes or using a topical oil or spray. So that's another way to build up the magnesium in your body. Just chat to a health professional before supplementing, because we never know how supplements are going to interact with our medications, if they're suited to us, or if there's another issue to do with sleep that you should be prioritizing. So better not to self-subscribe. Now, we need a little bit of a curfew before our sleep too of caffeine and alcohol. They both disrupt sleep by different mechanisms. Caffeine has a long half-life, so we want to stop the intake by 2 p.m. in order to get to sleep by 10 p.m. Now, caffeine actually blocks receptors which recognize that we are tired. So when we have caffeine, we're not actually improving our energy levels, but we're actually just suppressing and masking our fatigue, which is pretty scary when you think about people having a coffee to drive home when they're tired and all those things, because our mental function is not improved. We're just really masking our tiredness. So it's not a substitute for sleep. Alcohol can act as both a depressant and a stimulant, so it might help us relax into sleep, but then once we start processing it in our body, it actually has a stimulating quality. So while we may stay asleep, our quality of sleep and the depth of our sleep is going to be impacted. Now we want to get in the zone. Have you ever fallen asleep at a nightclub? I'd like to say me neither, but actually there was this one time where I fell asleep at 5 a.m. at a nightclub after a really big week. However, that's a story for another day. It's very unusual to fall asleep. We normally don't fall asleep in nightclubs because that environment is specifically designed to stimulate us. So we need to do the exact opposite kind of environment to calm our nervous system and stimulate the restful hormones rather than the stress hormones to help us sleep. So think about dimming the lights and the lighting. By nature, when we're camping or back before electricity, the sun would go down and we would have dim lighting, whether we had candles or firelight. We had dim red lighting after the point of sunset. So that is actually how our bodies are adjusted to have a good night's sleep. So we want to think about after sunset using dim lighting, not overhead lights, just maybe lamp lights, candle light, and also using warm or red toned lights because they're less stimulating to our pineal gland than cold blue lighting. So when you enter your bedroom to go to sleep at night, have it as dark as you possibly can, whether you use block-out curtains or removing any devices that are charging or covering up any little lights on electronic devices if you can't remove them. We also want to think about the temperature. Now, our core body temperature needs to lower for us to have a good night's sleep. So you want to keep our room cool and not overheat or not override that natural requirement of a low core body temperature. So if you do use a thermostat in your room, set it between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius and no higher than that. The other thing to think about in your sleeping environment is to have the most supportive mattress you can. Now, if we're getting enough sleep, we spend a third of our lives lying on a mattress. So you want it to be good. It's like a big chunk of your life. Pain is one of the key disruptors of sleep. So having a mattress to support your spine and keep it in alignment is really, really important. And you may also want to experiment a little bit with what kind of pillow feels supportive around your neck. And if you have any injuries along either your spine or your hips, your knees, anything like that, you may want to use body pillows. Ask a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist how to align body pillows for a better night's sleep, supporting the natural alignment of the body so that you don't feel really uncomfortable when you wake up and damage your quality of sleep. You also want to have a mattress that isn't off-charging VOCs or volatile organic compounds. So new mattresses will tend to do this. If you're buying a new mattress, then go for one that is organic or that is clearly labeled low VOC. And on that topic of air quality, you also want to look at the air quality in your room in general, making sure that you air it frequently, open the window, maybe get an air purifier, use pot plants to absorb the carbon dioxide of the air and any toxins, and look at things that might be impacting the quality of your air, such as VOCs in new furniture, in mattresses, in carpet, in paint, any signs of mold or damp that could be putting mold spores in the air. You really want to look at your environment and clean up any of this stuff as best as you can. And the last aspect of a good night's sleep is at the other end of the day, that the nighttime ritual. Now, I bet that this was something that you expected from this article, is that an evening routine will help you sleep. And you were spot on, because how we wind down impacts those hormones that we've talked about that we're releasing. And we all know that sleep is largely hormonal. So anything that might release stress hormones, such as late night study, work, running around getting all the jobs done in the house, scary movies, scary books, picking fights with your partner, addressing big problems. Finish all these things at least a couple of hours before bedtime. Instead, in the evening, you want to do things like having a warm bath. Now, this is good about 90 minutes before you want to go to bed, because we don't want to raise our core body temperature right before sleep, as we've already discussed. Our body likes a nice low temperature in order to sleep well, because that adjusts our melatonin production as well. So having a warm bath 90 minutes before bed allows for a rise in temperature. When we get out the bath, our body works actively to lower that temperature, readying it for sleep. Now, whether you have a bath and you can put magnesium flakes in the bath to help relax your muscles and even improve the blood levels of magnesium to help you relax mentally as well. Or after the bath, or if you're not bathing, you can apply magnesium oil to your body for the same effect. Now, if you do have a lot on your mind, it's really important to allocate some time in your life to deal with your worries. So whether you take an action that you need to take so it's off your mind, whether you talk your worries over with someone, have a good cry, do some journaling, have some kind of process in place to deal with and process your big feelings. Because otherwise, if our mind's racing, we're stimulating cortisol production. So that racing mind before sleep really needs to be dealt with before we lie down and try and get a good night's sleep. Or we'll have trouble falling asleep and may even wake up in the night as well. And one really good way to lower cortisol and to reduce that element of a racing mind is to take up meditation practice. Now, you can do this as part of your wind down routine or even when you're lying in bed. You may like to begin by listening to a meditation app and ideally choose one like Headspace that will teach you how to meditate so that you can ultimately do it independently. Now, these are a lot of suggestions and it's overwhelming to do them all at once. And if you try, you probably just go, oh, too much, not do anything, it feels too hard. So where to start? Go through the suggestions I've made again and we're going to choose 3 actions. The first action is the one that will be easiest for you to implement, the no-brainer, the low-hanging fruit. The second action is the one where, if you consider all of these actions we've talked about, is the one that you think will make the biggest difference for your quality of sleep. And the third action is one that's a one-off. So getting a mold inspection, changing your blinds, buying a pot plant, that kind of thing that you just do once and then it's done. So out of these 3 actions, choose one to start off with. You might want to do the one-off action because then it's one and done. And then each week you can implement one new action and let it become a little bit routine. And when you're ready, add one more action. Now, when do you need to get help with your sleep? You can get extra support at any stage of addressing sleep issues. Now, if you believe that stress and worry is part of the picture for you in getting good sleep, then accessing therapy services is really vital. And there's lots of ways you can do this: counseling, psychology, somatic experiencing, trauma therapists, all sorts of supports are available. Likewise, if you wake up in physical discomfort, it's likely that pain or physical issues are part of your poor sleep quality. So see a bodywork therapist, whether it's an osteopath, a chiropractor, a masseuse, many types of bodywork therapy out there. So look at what types of therapy are best suited to your physical issues. Now, if you've implemented some of these strategies and you're still struggling, you could ask your doctor to refer you for a sleep study where they actually study you as you sleep overnight and can help identify your underlying issues. You could also see a natural therapist, a naturopath such as myself, to address the dietary lifestyle changes and prescription of appropriate herbs and supplements to help you. So I hope these suggestions are of benefit. Take it one thing at a time, and I hope that as you implement them, you begin to have a good night's sleep. See you next time.